What's up, all you Minties? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, and join me today for an overview of X-Men, the art and making of the animated series. So, please stay tuned. And welcome back, everybody. Now, before I get started, a huge thank you to the folks at Abrams Books for sending me a copy of this hardcover. This hardcover came out sometime in October. I think it was like October 13th. But I just got it in, and let me just say something. I was pleasantly surprised with this hardcover. You all know I'm a huge fan of art books. You all know, this is the Uncanny Omar, how much I love X-Men. So, I thought I'd do everything about the animated series and the behind the scenes, but this is written by Eric and Julia Lewald, the two masterminds, really, behind X-Men, the animated series. So, who else knows more than them? Now, before I get started, I do want to do a size comparison to kind of give you an idea of what this art book looks like. So we have an omnibus behind it. As you can see, it's a lot longer, but not as tall as an omnibus. And here it is compared to the size of a standard size trade paperback. And I'm sure one of the things you've noticed already is the design on the front cover and then in the back cover. So on the back here, we have all the villains like Mr. Sinister, Juggernaut, Sauron, Magneto, Sabretooth, the Sentinel, Apocalypse, Omega Red, and Mystique. And then in the front, we have our heroes. You have Cyclops, I don't see Professor X though, Bishop, Wolverine, Jubilee, Jean Grey, Storm, Rogue, Gambit, Beast, and Morph. Which is a funny story about him. But let's go ahead and get this open. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this open. As I mentioned, it is written by Eric and Julia Lewald. And here are the... this is the storyboard for the opening. That's pretty cool. And here's the rough storyboard. This is really cool. I like that. Animation cells from the show. And then the art and making of the animated series. So this was really interesting because I started reading it just to get an idea of the things that we're going to be talking about within the book. Because as an X-Men fanatic, I love the animated series. The animated series introduced so many of my friends to the comic books. So I always praise how great it was done. It was handled with love and care. And here we have the story of one of the greatest pilots ever that never went anywhere, and that is Pride of the X-Men. If you saw my interview with Chris Claremont, this is the animated short that we were talking about when he was talking about casting an Australian, or giving Wolverine an Australian guy's voice. And then, it took years for X-Men to take off. It took years for somebody to actually green light a series. So they approached Fox with this, and long story short, it's funny because there's a story in here on how Eric and Julia were working at Disney, and that's how they met. So it's really pretty. It's I like that. I like that there's a lot of personal things in here too, not just business, because I think that's what makes a really good story, because you can really relate to the two people that were trying to pitch this series. And what I was going to say is that Eric, when he was trying to pitch the series, I say that like I know him, but reading about it, it was pretty funny because he didn't really know much about X-Men, right? But he had to present the series to all these heads, including Stan Lee, so I thought that was pretty funny. They talk about the costumes and why they decided to go with certain costumes, and of course we all know that is Jim Lee's design of the costumes that they decided to go with. They really pop, that's why. Jean Grey, why her hair is in a ponytail, and then you have sketches, right? Like the initial sketches for the characters, the way they were supposed to be looking at first, and then the original group that they wanted to use, and then that kind of kept growing. And the reason why they used Morph instead of the Changeling was because of a DC character named the Changeling. So it's little things like that I've known about, but there's some really awesome stories that are behind the scenes. Here are the different storyboards for the different openings. And I'm sure everybody, when I'm talking about openings, you all got that theme song just like me stuck in your head. Sorry, not sorry. Speaking of theme song, here's the score, and then the actual intro. So then, more behind the scenes. I can't flip through every page. By the way, speaking of pages, this has 272 pages. Retails for $50. I'll put a link in the description where you can purchase it. There's Morph, size comparisons. So it's funny because when the artists were trying to come up with these character sketches, they used a lot of the handbook guide to the Marvel Universe. Look at all those Morlocks. Like, those are actual, like, I don't know anywhere else where you can find pictures of obscure Morlocks for the animated show. So it's really cool to see things like that included in this book. And as a fan of art, oh, North Star and Aurora, oh man, this is cool. I haven't flipped through all of it. I am guilty. But what was I saying? I can't even remember. There's Apocalypse, and I'm sure we'll get to see his Force Horsemen. That might be some spoilers here. Let's keep going. And then they break down each season, right? And they talk about their very first story that they borrowed from a comic book, which is the Days of Future Past, which I think they ended up calling Future Tense. So, the paper quality, by the way, is this thick, glossy paper. I'm sure you can probably tell as I'm flipping through the pages here. Here are backgrounds and sets for Days of Future Past. So we're looking at a possible future. And Days of Future Past in the comic is, of course, a lot different than it is in the animated show. But it's interesting how they were able to make this show popular, how they were able to keep it going season by season. And I don't know, to me it was always a no-brainer. I'm like, just borrow stories from the comic books, but in order to do that you have to introduce all this mythos and stuff. Then how do you do that? And that's where the intro song comes in. So I thought that was a really cool story behind. We have to introduce these kids to these characters that are outcasted. How do we do that within a few seconds of an intro song? There's Len Wein. Morph from, I think that's season 2. Omega Red. So it's all these new characters that were appearing in the comic books too that made it into the animated show. There was all these Easter eggs. They talk about the character at the very beginning who looked like Artie, who's on the villain side. Why Thunderbird was, Warpath was on the villain side at first. How they were originally going to use Thunderbird instead of Morph as the character that dies off. The Phoenix Saga. See, I mean, even the Reavers, like, that's so cool. Pretty Boy, like, all these characters from X-Men just somehow made it into the animated show. You know, there's a rumor about this coming back, too. I don't know how true that is, but that would be really cool. Like a Disney Plus exclusive. It's the Hellfire Club. Yes, I remember there was an image in the Dark Phoenix Saga taken from this, which is probably one of my favorite panels of Wolverine. My turn. Yes, sir. In Dark Phoenix Saga, let's get past here to look at more character sketches. We talk about the 5th season, and I'm sure a lot of people remember that one not being well loved. So I like the idea that we're using animation cells and then also character designs and sketches, and nothing is left behind. They talk about each thing in these little footnotes. So by now, I'm sure you're probably sold if you were a fan of this show. If you were a fan of the X-Men growing up in the 90s, if the show is the reason that you are now reading comics, then you are going to love this book. It is just such a freaking wealth of animation sketches and then just extra materials. I love the stories from behind the scenes. Here's some more sketches from the last season. It's not just the animation, too. Let's look at... There's also unused sketches for, like, unused characters in here. And there's also the Legacy chapter, which talks about the legacy of the cartoon series. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. 1963 to 2020 and beyond. So, of course, all starting with X-Men 1 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. I used to have that trade cover. Came with my pizza at Pizza Hut. And I kept it because it's Joe Mad. There's all the cards and the video cassettes. How they brought back the series in X-Men 92, that limited series during the Secret Wars. There is the comic book that's based on the cartoon, which is based on the comic book, so I always thought that was pretty meta. The Kotobukiya figures here, they're not figures, but they're statues, the toys. So, I mean, it covers just about everything. I mean, would I have liked to have seen more? Of course. I'm greedy. I love art books. I would have loved to have seen this be twice as long and cover more sketches and talk more about the Apocalypse storyline in Season 4. But it's phenomenal. It's perfect for anybody that's a fan of the X-Men cartoon or a fan of the comic book. Let's look at this binding really quick. The book, I'm sure you could tell as I was flipping through the pages, has sewn binding. Here are all the page bunches together on that inner spine. So overall, this book was amazing. It brought back a lot of memories, and it also taught me a lot of behind-the-scene things as far as animation. And I'm not done with it yet. I'm literally like a fourth of the way done with it. But it's just a wealth of information that I think everybody that watched the series or just read the comic books would enjoy. And that, as they say, as that. And that was the page count, the content, and the build of this book. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions, if you want to see other books like this, such as The Gargoyles or Spider-Man, the animated series from the 90s. I'd love to see books like this from my childhood, like back in the 80s with Silver Hawks or Tiger Sharks. Why did I go with Tiger Sharks? Mask, things like that. But yeah, I would love to know all those comments down below. This was an amazing surprise. I really enjoyed reading about the behind the scenes and making this. I had no idea what went into making a cartoon, so this was really cool, and I highly recommend this book. So this was the Uncanny Omar. Please don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button, ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. We can be found on Redbubble and on Patreon. All of that information is in the description down below. And more importantly, please everybody stay healthy, stay safe, and much love to all of you.